Hello, and welcome to Character Class. We're back again, and this time we're going to take a closer look at forces to continue my little series of looking at all the spheres of magic a little more in depth, a little more of, kind of getting things, giving a little bit more explanation and so on. Because I've started doing it, and I'm going to do all nine, and I kind of like just talking about things in general. As usual, I'm going to reference the book quite a bit because that's what it's there for. And forces is one of the more fun little spheres. Definitely one of the more combat-oriented spheres because you can do a lot of things with forces. Uh, as always, with the first dot in forces, we have our sensory magics because we have perceive forces, which is what the apprentice does. I think that's what it is. Yes. Understand what he wishes to control. The apprentice of forces learns to sense different force patterns, read their intensity, learn of the distinctions between different variants of forces. Positive and negative forces, watch them interact, see where they emanate, where they go, etc., etc. This lets any mage using level 1 spheres can pick up and see like the electromagnetic spectrum of radio waves, of sun, light, radiation, anything that is considered a force. Gravity, for example, is considered a force. And with perceived forces, the mage can see gravity and the effects of it and what it's affecting more. There's only two level 1 effects written in here. One is, of course, dark sight, which is the absence of visible light. The mage can shift his perception up or down the spectrum of electromagnetic radiation. So basically, this lets you, as a mage, in this particular effect, see infrared, ultraviolet, radio waves, X-rays, anything along that electromagnetic spectrum. You can shift your sight to view it. Now, depending on the style of mage you are, how you do that is going to be different because all mages have their foci that they tend to use, their particular flavor of magic. Mysticism and the more mystic mages like Dream Speakers, Verbena, tend to do things a little bit more mystically, like calling forth the powers of animal spirits, whereas Virtual Adepts or Sons of Ether or the Technocracy, your more technologically oriented mages, would use devices to allow them to see into those ranges, which is kind of cool. The other one, level 1, is Quantify Energy. By invoking this effect, the mage can sense the type and amount of energy at work around her, easily translate her perceptions into accurate measurement units, such as volts, amps, and teslas. Note that this quantification includes kinetic energy, which allows a mage to determine an object's speed in relation to her if she knows the object's mass. So that can be handy. Can be handy. I can speak good or English, thank you. Just because a mage can sense and quantify energy doesn't necessarily let her make sense of it. A mage could note the presence of radio waves, but he might not be able to translate and hear them immediately. Let's see, you can do things later on. So those are the two effects in here for your sensory perception. And usually a lot of level 1 spheres tend to be revolving around your sensory magics, letting you pick up and understand and sense whatever sphere it is you happen to be poking your head into. And as such, there's a lot of neat little things you can do. So think about forces and think about the different types of forces that you have. Like kinetic energy, sure. Potential energy, that might be something to think about. The potential energy in an object, like a coiled spring, although I think that might be stored kinetic energy. Not 100% sure. It's been a while since I've taken physics. So we'll move on to number 2. Number 2 sphere, our second level, is control minor forces. Energy can always be diverted, and the disciple who understands forces can influence its direction and intensity. The mage can affect various patterns easily, altering their direction, changing their qualities, and controlling their dispersion. The mage cannot yet create forces from nothingness or change forces into different states, but he can manipulate how those forces interact with the rest of the world. So, with level 2, it says, by diverting a force, the mage can cause kinetic energy to change direction, thus changing an object's course. He can make fires dance according to specific images, and spread to or avoid certain areas. He can lengthen shadows or bend light so that images reach different destinations. He can even reroute the passage of electricity or cause radiation to avoid him. The mage can thus render himself or someone else invisible, cause sound to manifest somewhere other than its origin, and otherwise protect an area from interaction with forces. And there's all kinds of other little neat things that can be done. The two effects here you have are electrical chaos. Virtual adepts in need of a quick diversion often sabotage technocratic equipment with a sudden electrical pulse, which basically allows, the basic thing is you divert electricity and cause it to concentrate in an area rather than going the way that it normally does. And you can do some interesting things. Such an effect is a damaging attack striking against a living opponent or a device susceptible to electrical damage. So you can do some fun things with electrical chaos. Energy shield. You bulwark against certain forces. It's possible to not only defend against many attacks, but also to create a variety of interesting exceptions to natural law. Bending away light makes a mage invisible, but it also means that you can't see, because light's not getting to you. So you need to use another sphere, like correspondence, to see where you are if you've got an invisibility shield around you, because physics still works. You can also push away sound, you can push away heat, electrical, fire, anything that is any type of force, kinetic energy of a bullet, you can deflect it away from you so you don't get shot. See, there's neat little things like that. That's the second level, because it only lets you do minor forces. So you can only really affect one of them. They also mention here, by deflecting gravity, the mage can make himself essentially weightless, able to float or levitate, even controlling direction by allowing forces from certain directions to interact with you. Neat little things like that you can do. But then you hit level 3, which is transmute minor forces, which lets you grasp and twist the patterns of forces to your whim. And this is where things can get really Doctor Strange level of magic, because you can only affect individual small patterns of force. Even though you can only do that, but you can make the elements dance at your whim. Impart motion to an object, make a fire that burns cold, cause shadows to explode into bursts of light. Mages can use this power to fly, hurl lightning, pulse out electronics, and perform similarly dramatic feats. Still cannot create force from nothing without the use of quintessence, but he can turn minor forces to his own advantages. So you can convert force into an object or even a creature, disperse a material into raw energy, weave telekinetic controls around a creature or object, and he can cause his attacks to pass through objects or creatures harmlessly on their way to a target. So interesting things there. We've got the friction curse as one of the effects, which is you turn a subject's motion into heat energy. So it not only renders the subject unable to move, it freezes them in place, but it causes them to heat up until they burst into flames. Because any time they try to move, that movement is arrested, and that energy of their motion, that kinetic energy, is converted to heat. These are the things you can do when you hit level 3. Of course, it's vulgar as hell, but that's what you get. A modified version can cause the subject's own breathing action to create cold, freezing the subject in place and encasing him in a block of ice. Partial successes negate some motion, impart some heat. Multiple successes can transform motion into damage. And then you've got level 3 effect of telekinesis. It's basically what you would assume telekinesis is, manipulating things with your mind, or magic in this case. So you can do fun things like that. Now, level 4, control major forces. The adaptive forces can spread his knowledge to encompass entire groups of force and patterns that exceed his own scale. With enough effort, he can redirect massive energies, bring disaster crashing down across a great area, or shield entire groups of people from outside elements. Anything that is possible with control over minor forces is possible on a larger scale now. The mage is able to focus great energy into a single point or disperse massive powers across a wide area. He still cannot transmute large-scale forces, except a little bit at a time, but he can at least divert major forces to gain time necessary to affect them later. Such massive effects are usually vulgar, but sometimes no choice, and you have to rely on the big guns. Now, with controlling major forces, think of all the other forces that were in controlling minor forces: electricity, light, heat, gravity, fire, all that good stuff. You can still do this, but on a bigger scale. You could use the heat from a fire. You can control that and make it burn faster or burn slower. You can take it and redirect it so it burns in a single area and doesn't spread. Kind of create a fire break. You can, with electricity, you can literally manipulate a power grid and cause the electricity to all divert to a single building and fry everything inside it. You can do neat things like that. You can shield an entire building from view by bending light around it so it looks like there's nothing there on a bigger scale. They've got Embracing the Earth Mother is one of these. Let's see. Yeah, you focus gravity around them. You basically call to the Earth Mother, the Dream Speakers, and the whatnot. You create a gravity sink, making the victim weigh more, to the point that you can literally start doing damage to them from intense G-force. Then there's Stormwatch, redirecting wind forces and heat patterns. The mage can bring rapid change to the weather. So you can basically call up a storm by manipulating forces. And just imagine the sorts of things you can do. You could stop a tornado from forming by redirecting weather patterns. You can call torrential downpours to an area by inciting a massive storm, by redirecting the hot and cold fronts in there. You could imagine, for example, taking the kinetic energy of a river and turning it into cold. You could freeze an entire section of the river, like flash freeze, boom. Because there's a massive kinetic energy in a river. Things like that you can have some cool fun with. Then you have the fifth, and the fifth is transmute major forces. Now, this is where you can do all kinds of the most powerful stuff, because the Master of Forces is not to be trifled with. Through exertion and will, he can create a power on an incredible scale, creating effects that include storms of fire, massive charges of electricity, shadows that blot out entire city blocks, and typhoons even in the midst of a calm day. The mage can disperse such force as well, dousing a forest fire, bathing an entire area in light at night by transmuting darkness to illumination. Although conjuring or banishing forces from nothingness still requires contestants, because it always does, the mage can easily turn any existing force to his own ends with his knowledge of forces alone. Incredibly paradoxical, such masterstrokes can unleash force on a tremendous scale. You can do some fun things for transmuting major forces, because transmutation, aha, they have Inferno. By sucking all the light and sound out of an area and transforming it into heat, the mage can cause a small area, like a person or a building, as you do, to suddenly burst into all-consuming flames. That's Inferno. And then there's Tempest in a Teapot. The Stormwives of the Ravena use this magic to harness the pull of the moon and the flow of the tides and brew a tempest using a small copper kettle inscribed with runes and a length of cord as their foci. Multiple witches may act in concert, dancing around a larger cauldron. So you can literally create a storm using the energy of the moon itself. Just insane. But with that, with transmute major forces, you can literally take light, take the light of the sun shining down on a city, all that light, and you can turn that into heat, you can turn that into cold, you could turn it into sound if you want it. So you could literally make the sun scream if you wanted to. You could take the sound of a rock concert and turn that into gravity. So the louder a rock concert played, the heavier everyone would be. These are the things you can do. Anything that your mind can comprehend. You can turn sound into electricity. You can turn electricity into light. Well, you can do that anyways by flipping on a switch. But you know what I mean. You could turn the natural force of gravity in an area into electrical energy. So the force of the earth pulling on you would be powering all of your things, but everything would be weightless inside it. So, see, neat little things like that. I'm sure the Sons of Ether would like to do that. Just be like, use the power of the Earth's gravity to make themselves weightless and to power all their equipment forever. I can see them doing it. So yeah, any sort of force that you can think of. Kinetic force, electrical force, heat, work energy, that's kinetic. Yeah, light, darkness, anything like that. Radiation, even from the sun. All these forces, they are all at the whim of a master of force. They can be turned from one into the other. You can even, with quintessence, which is of course, the basis of all magic, the source, the fuel, as it were. With quintessence, you can create massive forces out of nothingness, which is always handy. Force tends to be, as a sphere, it tends to be aimed towards combat a lot of the times, because you can spend extra successes when you're casting your spells for forces to do damage. You can put those extra successes into the damage section of it. But it doesn't have to be. There are ways to use your forces magic to be non-combative. One of the things in, like, the very first one, level 1 forces, gives you dark sight for infrared, heat vision, night vision, as well as x-ray vision. Think of all the things you can use that for that isn't combat oriented. You can use it to scan the inside of a mystery box. You can use it to scan the inside of a locked door to give you an easier time picking the lock when you can actually see what you're doing. Infrared and dark vision to help with night maneuvers or any stealthy stuff that you happen to be going around. You can use some control minor forces to make yourself invisible for stealthy purposes, and so on. There's all kinds of different ways that you can have fun with forces. It's all up to your imagination. That's the one thing I do like about Mage. It lets anybody with some imagination just go to town. So, That's going to be it for this episode of Character Class. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. And throw a comment in the comments section. What do you think of the Forces sphere? What are your fun little ideas that you've come up with? What's the most creative use of forces you've ever used in a campaign, or you've ever seen used in a campaign if you're an ST that runs things? Uh, Throw those comments in the comment section. Let's get a discussion going. And until next time, you all take care and keep playing games.